Welcome to our discussion on the show. The hashtag we're using is Education254, so please keep your views coming in. Our SMS number is 22155 as well. Like we said, we're focusing on issues besides the teachers' pay. That is a big issue, but there's also other issues going on within education in Kenya, and that's what we want to expound our discussion to on the show today. We have Dr. John Mugo, who's from Twaweza. Thank you very much for joining us. Of course, he's in charge of data, which is what we would like to hear about today, just some of the information that you've been able to gather. Thank you. We also have Dr. Fred Mugambi. We're in good hands today. I mean, you know, doctors today. And he's the director of the Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology in Mombasa. Dr. Mugo, I'd like to start with you. I know we're focusing on the teachers' pay, and that is a big issue. But while that stalemate continues, what else is going on within the education sector? You've been gathering data for years now, including the one you did in 2013, which is the latest, and we'll be showing some of that. What is going on with education in the country?
The biggest thing that is happening now is really to ask ourselves about the relevance of our education. Is what students are learning now appropriate for this age? And this cuts across from early childhood, from the nursery school to the university. And this is a big question because the curriculum we have is what came in 1984 and into 1985. And so for 30 years, it's a question really that we have not asked ourselves seriously. Many things have changed. What we started with as 844 is not what we have at the moment. It was, we kept on removing one thing after another. We started with a very technical-based kind of an education where every learner was taught how to knit, how to make tools, how to farm, and so on. But that disappeared. And so what is the key thing at the moment is to see whether we should actually conduct an overall overhaul of the education system so that the changes that have happened in the society, globally, nationally, but also locally, can be incorporated so that the Kenyan child can access the best kind of contents to make them competitive both locally and globally. The other thing that is bothering our education are the inequalities. How, you know, the progress that we are making, it's like we make 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Because you find very good quality of education in some private schools, in a few secondary schools, especially the national schools, where everyone wants to get into. But then we leave the majority behind. If you look at the small schools, what used to be called the district schools, they're kind of left behind. And the inequalities across the country, compare the arid areas with the urban and the other areas, we really have many Kenyans who are left behind. And this is a big issue because we need to move together with an education that is equitable.
So moving together, I'll come to you, Dr. Fred, but then there was a COECH-led team that looked into our education system and made some recommendations. What about that?
Yeah, the latest inquiry was actually made by the Odhiambo task force, and we had a big national conference on education in March of 2012. There were major recommendations made. One of them recognized the fact that our education is actually for very few, the top 10% who are cognitively gifted, who have the intellectual capacity that a very academic education demands. So we have a lot of wastage because anyone who is gifted in any other area apart from the cognitive gets lost. And so one of the very key recommendations that we should revisit was that let the school have something for every child. If you are gifted in this way, then let the school prepare you for that. If you are gifted in arts, if you are gifted in languages, if you are gifted in sciences, let the school provide for you so that you can become the best.
So that is what is lacking at the moment. All right, Fred, what about investment? And I think this is mainly by government, because teachers pay aside. It's also an issue of infrastructure and all these other tools that the teachers need to be able to work effectively and provide the right sort of information.
Thank you very much, Yvonne. We definitely need to have what I would call an affirmative action when it comes to the education sector, and especially with regard to investment. Let me start from independence. At independence, we inherited what I would call colonial education. And this changed when we brought in the 844 system somewhat. That was the second, I would call, revolution in the education sector. We need a third revolution in the education sector. It is true that the government is spending about 335 billion shillings, which is about 20% of Kenya's budget. And when we look at figures like those, we might think that it is quite a lot of money. But let me give you a scenario. I was talking to a gentleman this afternoon who manages a school in Turkana.
All right. And as you continue with that, I'd like us to play some of the pictures from that school, because I think the pictures of that adequately tell your story. So if you can just have some of those pictures running from this school in Turkana. Carry on, Fred.
Now, I talked to the head teacher of Kotoro Primary School in Turkana. He's called Alotiki. He is the headmaster. He is the deputy headmaster, and he's a teacher. The school has only one TSC posted teacher, and it is serving 303 children. The allocation that were given for free primary education this term was about 42,000 shillings. If we distribute that among the 303 children, then what you have is 138, 139 shillings per child per term.
And these are the pictures that we're seeing on our screen of the school?
Absolutely. Literally, they have no classrooms. The gentleman has had to look for 3 other volunteers to help him in managing the school. They have had to build makeshift toilets, which are shared by both the girls and the boys and the teachers of both gender and the parents when they come. And so when we talk of education, we tend to over-focus on Nairobi and the other urban centers. I think we need to look outside Nairobi because most of the people we're bringing into universities actually don't come from Nairobi. They come from setups
and
like
it's what
I'm talking
John
about.
was saying about the inequalities that we have across the country with the amount of investment that we're seeing. But should we then start considering the amount of money? You know, we have an equalization fund for the counties. Should we then have an equalization fund when it comes to education and say certain regions, like what we're seeing on our screens, and these are the ones who, by the way, are supposed to get laptops, although we hear it's not laptops anymore, it's a digital learning curriculum. But John, do you think we're investing enough in that? Because this is not even just about the teacher's pay, is it?
Yeah, in my opinion, the per child capitation is a terrible thing, because we take money where there's already money. There's the school that Daktari is talking about is actually even good. There's a school we went to in Chemoligot that had a population of 103 students. So if you give them 10-20 per child, they are receiving basically 100,000 to run a school that has no toilets, that has nothing, no teachers. While another school that is in Nairobi and other places where people are concentrated has 3,000 pupils. And that school has classes, it's where the teachers want to be because there is infrastructure. So we are taking the money, government's money, where there is already money because we have bigger population. And the people who need more support, who need equalization, actually are left to trot on their own. That school that has the one teacher is going to sit for KCPE like any other school and be judged against the same standards. So what are we saying as a national system?
Let's talk about free primary education and the sort of pressures that it's putting. I mean, it was a great thing and universal education for everybody. But has it become a case of quantity versus quality? And I think every year we load the number of pupils that join class 1 and then therefore transitioned from class 8 into secondary school. Fred, is this the way to go, or you know, what else needs to be done?
Let's give credit where credit is due. Free primary education was a good thing. It was a good thing. But my feeling is that we didn't plan enough for the free primary education. So, for example, we didn't look into the 5-year period preceding the starting of the free primary education. And so no one, for example, asked themselves what will happen when these children get into university. And by the way, they're getting into university now.
And what's your experience with those
of course,
beneficiaries of free primary education?
Of course, the supply of the students is so high, far outstripping, the capacity that is there within the universities.
But I think, Daktari, one of the issues, let's face the fact, it's not free. We had a promise by the president lately that in 3 years it's going to be free. But when you look at it, actually what free primary education did was to sort people. Those that could afford a better education exited.
And went to private schools?
Those that were hovering around and had no option were left in. And when you talk even about the teachers' strike today, who is suffering? It is basically the children of the poor.
In public schools.
Because private schools are moving on with the learning and so on. And so I think let's probably see whether the free that the president promised can actually be free, so that school can actually be built using government's money, where we have only one teacher and parents cannot pay for teachers the way maybe the parents of Kiambu or of Kakamega would do. Then the government would employ enough teachers.
And Yvonne, just to add to what he's saying,
yes.
I think by bringing in the free primary education, we were trying to sort out a crisis.
Okay.
We ended up creating more
Another
crisis.
one. Okay.
And this is the crisis that was created as a result of, can I call it, failure to plan ahead. If you look at the ratios between teachers and students, we are far below the UNESCO, and I'm sure Dr. will be talking about this. We are far below the ratios that are approved by UNESCO. And so I think this is the right time to have what I would call a third way in sorting out the education sector problems. We need to sit down. We need to do thorough evaluation of the free primary education. We need to look at the resources in terms of the classrooms, in terms of technology, in terms of the capacity. No one is even talking about the capacity building of the teachers themselves, leave alone the availability of the teachers.
Right.
Are the teachers...
Of the ones that are already...
Absolutely.
In the
what is the quality of training
right.
of the teachers? We need to look at all these issues.
Okay. All right. Quality of training. That's an interesting point that you bring out, because we've seen various statistics from Toweza in your organization, and we'll have those on screen in just a moment, about the quality of learning of the pupils in these schools. And every time you release this data, you know, we get shocked as a country and we say, oh my goodness, what's happening in our schools? And we quickly move on and we sort of get numbed by these statistics that you release year on year. Talk to us about, like Fred says, the quality of training the teachers themselves are receiving, and therefore the quality of teaching that they're passing on to their students.
Actually, the biggest crisis in our teachers is not the lack of knowledge or skills. It is lack of the right attitude that a teacher ought to have. And we have seen that however much we increase the teacher's knowledge or the teacher's skills, we are unable to affect the attitude. The attitude means, for instance, that this teacher, when they walk into class, are they bringing in positive energy for learning in the classroom? Are they inspiring their children? Are they feeling good about themselves, or do they go to class and complain all the time? And so the kind of teachers we have, first of all, who gets to become a teacher is a real question. If you are to sort them out between those that initially wanted to become teachers and those that ended up being teachers because there was nothing else for them, or because they failed to get what they thought they ought, they should have become, you find that the majority of teachers that we have right now either never wanted to become teachers or became teachers and are now looking for a way out. And so that's why this crisis actually has built up. But as Daktari says also, when you sit in a classroom and observe how teachers teach, then you see that many teachers require help. They require support to improve the way they teach, the way they communicate, the way they prepare, the way they assess their children, and the way they use the feedback that they receive from children to improve themselves.
Right.
And unless we get a teacher who is competent, we have a teacher who is esteemed, we have a teacher who has a vision, then the crisis we are having of quality, I think, is going to be with us for a long time.
And tell us about, carry on, Fred.
Yes, and a teacher who is motivated as well.
Yeah.
Mm.
You know, I teach at the university.
Yes.
You can force me to go to class,
Yeah.
but you can't force me to teach. So you can force a teacher to get to class and talk to children.
Right.
But is that teaching? A teacher has to be motivated. And if I remember well, my nursery school teacher is still one of my greatest role models. Because I believe that lady was not teaching for money. He was motivated. She was motivated.
All right, Fred, and you mentioned an interesting thing. Is money the only motivating factor for teachers?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Go to staff rooms in some of our primary schools, and you'll wonder how you can even prepare a lesson plan seated on some of those seats. And so what kind of environment have we created in some of these schools? Are these teachers empowered? We are talking about free laptop. I know that is not what we are discussing today. But how many of these teachers own a laptop? How many of these teachers have had an experience with a laptop? And all this is part of the motivation that the teachers, of course, need to have.
All right.
And what is actually most important is what we call intrinsic motivation. That when you are doing something, you get fulfillment from it.
Right.
You do it because you love it, because you have passion for it. Of course, your basic needs must be covered, because if you cannot educate your own children first, because the salary you get is not enough to pay for them for a good education, then there is no way you'd have that. But we need recognition of teachers. We need to recognize teachers who are doing well. We have seen people being given CBS, EBS, and all these kind of awards.
And we never see teachers feature.
We have not seen teachers featuring, teachers being honored for the contribution that they make. We always see the bad teachers, the ones who are impregnating, the ones who are doing this. But I'm sure we have many teachers who wake up every day and do very good work to ensure that their children succeed.
Okay.
Those are
money.
the positive stories we need, so that the esteem of the teacher can be restored.
Right, and it's going beyond, the salary, which is an important issue that we might add. But it's about a lot more, because the teacher that the pictures that we've seen, surely. I can imagine the motivation of that teacher to go to class every day if they're sharing toilets, if they're under a tree. So that's important to mention. I want to focus a little bit on universities as well, and especially because you are the director of one in Mombasa. Now, during the Global Entrepreneurship Summit, a lot came up about also the quality of learning at the universities. I remember when university, and this became compulsory, it was Entrepreneurship 101, which was a common course unit. You were 500 in a class, and you didn't really care. Of course, they made it compulsory for you to pass, but it simply seemed like part of the course, rather than actually instilling that. Talk to us about the quality of teaching, the quality of learning at the tertiary level.
Yvonne, I know that universities at the individual level are really trying their best, but they need support. Let me give you some scenarios. The free primary education children are getting into universities now.
Right.
The statistics are a bit shocking. I don't think we have more than 400 full professors in this country. And we have over 66 universities. To become a full professor, you need not less than 20 years of teaching.
Yeah.
That tells you that we are a long way. There is no motivation, for example, for people to do PhDs in this country, because it doesn't add to anything. This is one country where an MCA, and I respect MCAs, but this is the one country where an MCA earns more than a professor. And so why should I become a professor, other than for the prestige of being called a professor? That is where the situation begins. The amount of capitation that is given by the government, and we know resources are limited, but the amount of capitation that is given by the government is grossly inadequate. And so, unfortunately, universities are faced with a situation where you have so many, students that need to be taught, but you do not have the resources to do that. And you cannot overcharge in order to raise money to build classrooms.
Because these are public universities
Absolutely.
that are meant for those that don't need it. So, not more than 400, let me understand your statistics.
Yes.
Not more than 400 full professors across 66 universities in the country to serve a population of 44 million people on average, though not all of them are in university.
Perhaps about 140,000.
Okay, 140,000 that would be in these schools. So then the effect of that is what? That we have university graduates?
The effect of that, unfortunately, is that the professors who are there and the PhD holders that are there in universities are grossly overworked. They're overworked.
Yeah. How important is research and development in
Absolutely
in
important.
Country?
I mean,
just paint that picture for us about having professors and encouraging research at that level.
You cannot develop a nation without science and without research. But look at it this way. To do an engineering degree in this country as a self-sponsored student, you have to pay so much. $1 million shillings plus in total.
Right.
And we need engineering to develop this nation. And so, the courses that are critical in developing the nation are the ones that people cannot afford. Those courses need to be subsidized, I mean, greatly. Actually,
some would say that's already happening, though. In the
it is happening, but it is not sufficient.
Okay. I think I had a discussion with an engineering professor who told me actually that they now have to teach engineering theoretically because there are no workshops that are equipped. And this is one of the leading universities teaching electrical engineering, that he has to use PowerPoint to show them how things work, because he has no access to a workshop that is equipped to teach the technologies that he's supposed to teach.
Coming up again, even at the university level?
Yeah.
Not investing enough in the tools that are needed?
We definitely need to more than triple the amount of investment that we are putting in public universities, for example. It is absolutely important. It is urgent, and if this is not done, the crisis will deepen, and in a few years, then we will be too deep to get out.
Shocking that they have to use PowerPoint, especially for that. If you take a look at what happens at Nairobi University, the drawing and design, anyway. But I'd like to talk about banning mock exams, because that's also something that's coming up, and you know, the Cabinet Secretary for Education has said this is putting undue pressure on the students now at that lower level. If we can go back to that a little bit. What do you think about that? Is exams the sure way to make sure that we understand, that we can gauge the level of understanding?
Of course, we have a problem and a crisis, I think. Let me call it a crisis with our assessment system, the way we examine our students, the kind of stakes that the examinations are now commanding. But that aside, banning exams, I think even if we said we remove the mocks, that is just a symptom of a much larger problem. The larger problem is that we have, I think, changing adolescents. The adolescents we had in the 90s are not the adolescents we have at the moment, but I think teachers have refused to change. The society has democratized widely, and the methods of discipline that used to work are illegalized. The teachers have not been equipped with alternative methods of especially ensuring that students ventilate, that the school democratizes. When you think, for instance, and also the kind of conflict that has emerged, for instance, a mobile phone is legitimate at home but illegal at school. And this is the same parent, the same teacher. The teacher is a parent
as well.
So to her children at home, her children have mobile phones. To the children in her class, it is illegal to be found with a mobile phone. And so I think this crisis, I think it's a transitional. We find a lot of pressure, a lot of tension building up between children and their parents, children and their teachers, but also parents and teachers. And I think until we admit that times have changed and resort to alternative methods of controlling behavior.
So this is not about banning mock exams?
Autocracy will not work in a school that exists within a democratic society.
Absolutely.
I think.
Absolutely.
Let me just add something to what Daktari here says. I have a lot that I can say about examinations. But let me paint a scenario. What happens when, during that 2 hours, when the child is supposed to do the KCPE, someone in the family passes on? They fail because their mindset, their mind is not attuned to the examination.
And engaging
so
all of that
we
work
have
by
reduced,
one exam?
Absolutely. We have reduced evaluation of students to an activity, whereas it should be a continuous process from kindergarten all the way. We have to build in the school system continuous ways of evaluating our children.
And that was Daktari very clearly recommended by the Odhiambo Task Force.
Absolutely.
That let's reduce the stakes. It cannot be that you are 4 years of secondary school and knowing how much those kids struggle is minimized to
1 month of exams.
to 2 hours, and you are condemned forever because you'll never get to the university. If you don't get a C+, then you are done.
And it's not even a C+.
And also
that's
look,
just what we say on paper.
and look also at the tensions around the examination. I would assume maybe we have more policemen guarding examinations than guarding elections. So why all this?
All right, interesting points. I'd like us to wrap up our discussion now because we've spent quite a bit of time on our discussion today, and for me it's the take home. So what do we do as parents? What do we do as guardians? What do we do as citizens? Because this can go beyond the discussion. This can go beyond the hashtag that's trending on social media. So what do we do now? Where does this leave us, John?
I think one of the things I would like to call upon all of us to support the reform process that is being proposed now by the Ministry of Education through the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development. I think momentum is building to say that we cannot sit there and continue blaming each other. Let's come back all together and see where we can change, and we change sustainably. And I think the needs assessment process is going to commence. Let parents talk their minds out. Let teachers also be open and honest about what is working and what is not working, so that once all this is put together, then we can change our education to be that kind of a system that would give us the best for our children.
Fred, a minute?
Yes, thank you. Two quick things. One, we have to listen to Lotiki in Kotoro Primary School, because that school represents the school system outside Nairobi and outside our urban areas. But there is something else, Yvonne, that perhaps another day we might need to discuss. What happens to the over 80,000 kids who don't make it to university? Is anyone thinking about them?
Okay.
Where do you get a plumber nowadays trained?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So it's absolutely important that we start asking questions and planning for these children. And like I said, it is important to have a third way out of the whole of this process.
All right. Yes. Dr. Fred Mugambi, Dr. John Mugo, thank you both for joining us on the discussion. Keep your comments and feedback coming in. The hashtag is Education254. We'll be right back.